the first demonstration tonight is going to be using the Oneway Easy Core system. And for those of you that have potentially looked into any type of coring, there's really two primary systems on the market right now, and that's the Oneway design, which uses what's commonly kind of referred to as a fixed radius type of system with different knife sets. There's 4 different knife sets available with the Oneway system, and they run from about a 5-inch radius up to about, I think, an 8-inch or 9-inch radius. I've got 3 knife sets. I don't have the largest one, and it's pretty much, the 3 knife sets can get me up to about a 15-inch bullet, I would say. Just to show you a couple of the components. Pass this around. This is the, oh geez, I don't even know the official name, but this is kind of like the cutter arm. So this is the part that swings through the arc as you're turning, and it's what I've got attached to the handle right here. There's a cutter that's attached to one end, and this cutter can be taken off for sharpening. Oneway's got a specialized little device that is used for mounting this and grinding it if you want a hollow grind on it. And actually what I've done, which is an alternate method, is just taking it and facing it off on a diamond sharpening plate. So that works real well. I'm just going to pass this around. You can look at it and see that the primary cutting edge on this is really these 2 little wings here on each side. So it provides a kerf that's looks like about 3/8 of an inch, whereas the bar here is about 1/4 of an inch. The other part of the system is the support piece here. And what this does is, as you're cutting, initially I'll start off and I'll just have this adjusted up to where it's close to the piece. And as I start progressing the cutter inside the wood, I'll stop and I'll insert this in there so it provides continuous support as I get in further and further inside the piece. And that's one of the aspects of this system that provides a lot of stability and confidence, is that you don't get into vibration or other types of instability that you might with some of the handheld types. Pass it around. You all can see that. Okay, with that being said, let me just go ahead and tell you a little bit about my approach. I've only used this a couple of times. You've seen the piece that I did back there with the big leaf maple burl. I've done another similar piece with a piece of elm. This is elm that I'm going to be doing tonight. And there's nothing special about this shape that I did. It's just that I had to kind of face it off like this because the way the tree, the way this blank was. But actually after doing it, I thought to myself, it actually lends itself a lot better to being able to mark it out for turning. Because what I've done is, I've looked at the overall thickness of this piece, and it's about 6 inches thick. And my biggest piece down here is going to be about this tall, and I'm going to want it to be about an inch, 1.5 inches thick, rough, and then that leaves me another 4.5 inches or so. So I figure I can get about 5 pieces out of this. So what I've done is, I've just, and this may not work, this is my approach tonight. I've made some little marks here where I'm going to kind of come in my plan of attack. Now what I've got to do is, I've got to adjust the depth of my cut by adjusting where this piece is here. Okay, because if I'm out here, you're going to see I'm not going to get very deep. If I come in too far, I might come in and take in too much depth. So I'm basically just going to kind of eyeball this. I mean, if I was really working with a piece of the burl, I'd measure out a lot of things. I'd look at my distance here, the radius of the cutter, which on the small one is 5 inches. And I would say, you know, how far do I want to come in and take the meat out of this blank? So again, I know this is about 5 inches deep. Get my tape measure here, and I'm going to make my first cut, my first bowl blank out of this. I'm going to make it about 2 inches deep. So I'm going to set this at about 3 inches to the center. Okay? And based on the diameter of the piece that I want to take, I've got my little mark here. And again, I just eyeballed these so that my first one's going to be thickest, a little bit thinner, until this last one out here probably only needs to be, 3/4 of an inch thick. Okay? So that's pretty good position right there. So I'll lock this down.
Tim, the pivot point doesn't have to be dead center then, right?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It does not. It does not. And you'll see actually what I did when I did the maple burl down there. It is not. Could you hand me the biggest bowl there? If you look at this, you'll see it's not one continuous radius. And what I've done is, I've gone in so far, and then I've changed directions. So it gives me a little bit of flexibility to not just make it a perfectly round bowl. Okay? So I might, as I'm cutting through this, if I change positions, how I'm, where this is center-wise this way, or this way, that can help me change directions. Does that all make sense so far? Any questions before we go?
Yeah, Tim, are you below the pith or the center of the tree?
The way these are set up, this particular system here is sized, let me think, I think 20 to 24 inch. And what you do is, this piece down here, you adjust such that you get this cutting edge right at the center line of the lathe. Was that the question?
No, the piece of wood, is it below the pith of the tree?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the pith on this was out here. This was the outside of the tree.
Okay.
So my pith was down here. Okay. The other thing I want to mention about this, you don't have to have a tailstock with this. I like to run it just as a little extra safety.
You don't want to be the last one to get it, so you're stuck with it.
And to do that, you just need to have a little extender. This isn't part of the Oneway. This is just something I picked up off of eBay. So, if you guys were,
I have no comment yet.
if you notice what I was doing right here, I was taking my support piece and I was just bringing it up a little bit closer there. So I probably won't even have to readjust this. I might, because this is going to be a fairly shallow cut. The other thing is, I'm not necessarily going to have to take the cutter all the way to the very center line. I just need to take it far enough that I can just kind of knock it loose. Okay? So we're going to run about 500 RPMs. That's about as fast as we need to do with this. And that's about it. I think we're sure everything's tight. That's good. That's tight. Okay. And I'll tell you, I'm using very little force here, and it's doing all the work. So I mean, literally, anybody can come up here and do this. Working out well. It's the first time I'd sharpened these cutters since I bought them, and I wasn't sure if I did it right. Okay, let's just see here real quick if we can. All right. Okay, so there's the first one off.
Man.
Now you're running at 180 degrees from what you would normally make a bowl. Do you make all your cutout bowls that way? I mean, you could flip the piece the other way, because you said the pivot was back here.
Yeah, my this is kind of my preference. Is I like doing the bowls. You can make a bigger bowl if you do it the other way, but I kind of like the way the grain runs when I do it this direction.
Okay.
Just personal preference, doesn't matter. Okay, so now I can probably still use the same cutter. And again, you know, if this was a real expensive piece of wood, I might get real fussy about you know, where it is that I start and stop. I know now I've not gone very deep. I've gone about what I thought I was going to. And I am 1.5 inches deep. It looks like, just eyeballing that. So, let's see here. If I want this piece to be about, well actually I got that nub in there. We'll call that 2 inches. Take it to 3 inches, because I got to allow for my curve. I think if I set this at about 2 inches to the center, it should be just about right. Yeah, that should be about right. So I've got that little mark that I made earlier, right up here. And
now you rotated that a little bit on the axis, didn't you? See, this is this angle now.
oh yeah, that doesn't matter. Yeah, this angle here doesn't really matter too much.
Well, it'll make the bowl deep, thinner or deep.
Well, it changes the shape, if you will, because if you think about it, if I was to take, let's say this cutter here, and come into it, you know, I would end up making a very big radius. It would be like a cone.
Yeah.
Okay, it would make like a cone shape. Whereas if I'm coming out further and move it out this way, and I make a longer sweep, it ends up a little bit flatter. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. The first time I was 3, so this should work out about right. Let's get up. Let's see. Again, I mean, it's not imperative I use this, it's just a little extra factor of safety. And those standing around me probably appreciate it. You want to bounce off somebody else first. There's a smart man right there.
I don't want it climbing up my leg.
I hear you. Okay. So we're in pretty good shape there. All right.
Tim, is that green wood you're cutting, or relatively?
It's relatively green. I mean, it's relatively green.
Yeah. Wasn't cut down yesterday.
Boy, I sure could use some coffee. Just kidding.
I thought Joan made the coffee.
I'm just kidding.
Normally Joan does, and I made a deal with Safeway down there that I wouldn't make coffee, but they'd be glad to sell me.
Hey, Ed. like a knot or something really hard. It's really hard to set. I'm just pulling it in and out a little bit to help clear the chips. If it's not immediately apparent, power is your friend when you're doing this.
In other words, the thing probably wouldn't work on a little right one.
That'd be tough. And see, I made that one all the way through without even extending that in. Okay, and my second one. Just pass this around if you want to look at those going through.
If you were to finish it, you would sand this maybe first?
No, because I'm roughing. If this was a dry piece, what I thought about doing is that I would actually take my gouge and I'd go in there and maybe even finish up this surface, get rid of the little nubbin in there, and then take my next cut. And then that way I could always finish the outside by putting it into like a jumbo job or something.
So how do you finish those there?
Well, what I'll do is I'll jam chuck it to create a little bit bigger tenon. And then once I've got the tenon, I can finish the inside. And then I'll either use a vacuum chuck or a jumbo jaws, you know, to finish the outside.
Can you move the cutter just a little bit, take a fine cut before you go on to the next pole?
Can I move the cutter on here?
Yeah, cutter, or the position of the cutter. So you take another cut, but take a fine cut.
Oh, you mean before I finish it?
Right.
Like I did with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't done that yet on this one because it didn't really jump out at me like it needed to do that, but I think I'm actually probably ready for a different knife though. So I'm going to change these out. We're going to go to a second size. Number 2 would be on there. The depth of this one. The radius of this cutter here is about 6 inches, I'll say 6 1/4 to the outside. Currently I'm at a depth effectively of about 3 inches, which is what I thought from the last time. So if I've got 6 1/4, I'm 3 inches deep already, and I want this about maybe an inch thick. Not quite. I'll need to have about 2 inches between my center line and the front of this piece. Again, this is all just guesstimating. There. That looks like that would be about not quite an inch.
Yeah.
There we go. About an inch. That should be about right. Okay, that looks all right. 2 inches.
3 cutters like this?
Okay.
This is a different section.
All right.
There's many options.
One thing I didn't do is I didn't get this center part here supported. So let me get that taken care of.
I guess if you mess balls. You haven't done much. I've got tools like that.
All right. Now this one definitely, as deep as I'm going to be going, I'm going to end up needing to stick this inside there, so we'll get a chance to see this get repositioned, the support.
If you're on that,
See the way it's jumping around a little bit on me? Because I wasn't holding very good. You know, I'm trying to hold it steady, but really you don't need much pressure. Now, as I'm looking at this, you know, I'm looking down there and I'm thinking, you know what, maybe I want to change directions. And if I wanted to at this point right here, what I'll do is I'll just change it very slightly. It's not going to matter a lot. But I'm just going to move the center of rotation out this way a little bit while keeping this in there. And what that'll do is that should help flatten out a little bit of the bottom of that piece. Okay? Just a little bit that it would move. And I just want to make sure that I've still got some freedom here. Okay.
But that didn't affect you. You won't be cutting too shallow now to where it comes back out.
I shouldn't be. I think I've got plenty of meat here for this piece already. I mean, and actually the way I did that, I'm coming out, I'm going to actually end up widening the kerf a little bit up here, but as it comes in, it should end up kind of closing back off. All right. Now what I'm going to do is to get this piece in there.
Yeah.
Tailstock was just a little bit too close for me to be able to position that bar. Okay. Now, important thing when you stick that in there, you just want to make sure that you're not binding anything up. You're just trying to get a little bit extra support. So. This is a whole lot easier way to take the hollow out of the hat than using that big thing, I'll tell you. I guess once you're used to those big bars, it's okay. But my couple attempts at hat, this is what I use to take my core out.
That's what you're thinking you went. More like a column.
Does. All right, now see, I'm feeling a little bit of vibration, so I'll go ahead and take this in a little bit more.
Yeah, Jerry ended up cutting 3 fingers at the fair trying to hollow one of them out.
Oh, no.
Is that right?
You can't go anyplace without hurting yourself.
As you start getting deeper with this, is just chips start kind of clogging up a little bit, so you have to pull it out a little bit more often. All right. the other one.
Pop it around a little bit. You got a bone.
Alright.
Start.
And let's see, I've got how many more cuts? 1, 2 more cuts. I'll probably go ahead and take this same knife. I'll do another cut with it. So for each knife, I mean, you can get a number of different radiuses out of there, is what you've seen. So that smallest knife I did the first 2 cuts with. And now this one here I'm using for 2 cuts. And if I want this to be about 1 inch thicker than what I was already, all I got to do now is just take this about 1 inch further down in. Okay, so again, just to double check, that's about 6 1/4. My depth is about 3. So oh no, I don't want that to be. Let me think here. Let's see. About 3 inches. I got 6. You know what? When all else fails, what I can do, if I start overthinking this, I'll literally just kind of hold this thing up like that and look at it and say, does it look like it's going to sweep in the arc that I want? And
Nothing like eyeballing.
yeah, literally, I mean, if it's, especially while you're practicing, I mean, I like eyeballing. I mean, sometimes you get stuff you wouldn't get if you tried to do it by measuring everything.
Then you wouldn't remember how you did it.
No, I'm measuring, you know. I think it's about I could overanalyze this thing, but I'm just going to cut.
He wants to go to 4. He should be about 2 1/4 inches off.
And that's about where I am.
About 2 1/4?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, and then my depth here, now see that's off. Because I want to be about a good inch of material. So I want to come out.
Just put it underneath my chair and kill it.
Tim, since your wife's here, maybe this is a question I shouldn't ask, but about what's the price range on these things?
Oh, $50. Well, I'll tell you, I wouldn't have this if Craft Supplies hadn't closed them out. I got them when they were closing them all out, and they were like 30 to 40% off. To put together what I've got here, the 3 knife sets and the base, I mean, it's probably borders around $500, you know, $450, something like that. So it's, you know, it's definitely the more expensive option, but you got to kind of weigh that against having a little bit easier startup time.
So now he eats peanut butter and crackers. So.
No,
He said filet.
The government will pay for it because it'll be part of your saving the green.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Part of the green initiative.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe the government can do something like that.
Might make 6 holes. I go all the way through this, does anybody want to come up and just feel how much pressure it takes to really bite in on this? Bogging it down on the high rate. Well, I don't see how either. Not close to the adults. It's not like
Hey, Tim, when you moved that in, did you have to tighten the Allen wrench on to keep that lower part too, or is that floating in there?
oh, it floats.
Oh, okay.
On the bottom?
Well, I thought there was one on the side too, maybe.
Oh, no, there's a little, I'm not sure what that is down there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically just kind of floating in there. I mean, it's free to kind of bounce back and forth. probably stop there. I don't want to, I could possibly take one more out of there, but I was going after 5 bowls, so 5 bowls we got.
Oh,
Very good.
good job.
Now, Tim, you, on your, burrow ones here, it goes in and flattened out pretty much. Now, did you have to,
When I did, again, you know, it's like you ask me how I do something sometimes, I can't remember it at the time, but I remember playing around with those and even using a different knife, like starting with a number 2 knife, a small